Oh, here we go. Welcome, everyone. And a little surprise for you, Rick Greathouse is here, which is wonderful. And this is conversation 6 in the series of 7, Living, Loving, and Laughing, series 2. And besides chatting with Rick, which I'm sure we'll be doing, we're also going to be talking about installment 5 of Secrets of the Unknown, which is chapters 28 to 34, 35, maybe 34. And also, I'd like to touch on the powers of Christ in A Shock to the System, which is now complete. So welcome, Rick. Welcome, everyone. Lorraine, Judy, and Judy. Jude and Judy.
Just going to get myself set up here.
All right. Judy, your place looks so beautiful.
I love decorating. I love the colors and the lights this time of the year. A little overboard, but it's okay.
No, it looks like a magical. It's magical.
Yeah, that's not all of it, what you're seeing. I do the bedroom, I do the bathroom, I do the kitchen, I have the garden done. I just do it all.
Do you have a train that runs around?
No, not anymore, but at one time we did. But I don't have a train.
So Rick, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Rick. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. Early Christmas present. Your presence. Thank you.
It's wonderful to see all of you too.
Yeah. It's been a while. Yeah. Great. So does anyone have any burning questions, so we can do what we did for Rick? Maybe for Rick first, if you have any questions for him, because he's here today.
Wow. You know, Rick, I think of you often, of course, but in receiving this material, you know, I know you're so open and ready to receive. And the deities have chosen you. This is your work. I don't know, maybe you're a super soul, Rick, somewhere, but when you first received this material, was it a surprise to you, or were you already aware of the true creation story?
Well, no, I've never wanted to be a writer. I never thought of myself as a writer. I had been reading a lot of, spiritual books, and I do feel like I've had 3 souls, and this one that I have now appears to have, some highly developed abilities to do all of this, but really, yeah, it was just a surprise. I didn't know what it was or what I was supposed to do with it. And it's still really, I just figured that out just recently, because I've been getting these last 7 books. And now that I see the whole picture, my brain understands it better. But it's just been like it's been like a blind person just going along, just having no idea what it was. A lot of times I was writing multiple books all at the same time. And so in the morning I would get what I called my walking papers, and I would have time set up where I was going to be writing from this book or from this other book. And kind of, I never knew where it was going or how much of it there would be or what it was, but there was never an outline or anything like that. It was just totally blind. And after a pandemic really helped me with all of this, because I was less busy, so I could devote more time to it. And then I stopped worrying about it somewhere along the way. I was always, worried about it for a long time, but I just stopped worrying about it, and I accepted the fact that I don't know what this is and what's supposed to happen with it. and just enjoy that experience of not knowing, because I used to be a real control freak. I wanted to, I thought I should know. But this has taught me that I don't know anything. And so just relax and, enjoy the ride and see where it takes you. And so almost 2 years later, this brain's are kind of figured out, okay, I know what all of this is now, finally. So it pretty much was like somebody just being dragged in off the street and doing something that they had no experience with before. So that was my experience with it too.
Lorraine, you're on mute.
Wow. I don't know if I'm having a little difficulty with the connection, because I had to, it was spinning for a while as I was reconnecting, but I could hear you, Rick, but I couldn't see you there for a minute. So hopefully, and then when I did come back, I was on mute. But anyway, as I was saying, it was such a mind blowing, and it is still mind blowing in a way. I find this week's installment wasn't quite as crazy as last week's in terms of being shocked. But what I do find is that it makes so much sense, the true creation story, living, more with the unseen makes way more sense than the world we ever created. So I want you to know how much I've really appreciated that it was released and I'm part of this, because Christina had mentioned, these are my words, that, this material was such, was so different or shocking that I think you received it in the summer. She wasn't, or both of you maybe weren't quite sure, how do we release this and when? But I do want to tell you, we'll probably get into this in chapter, and we'll get a little ahead of ourselves here, but in chapter 31, it talks about everyone was successful in the marriage between their souls and their bodies in these environments. So he had been previously talking about the ratio of negativity to positivity in certain realms, certain worlds, right? And it was easy for some because the ratio wasn't as great as the negativity that we have had to deal with. But it does say virtually everyone was successful in the marriage between their souls and their bodies in these environments. And this is what we're coming to in the 3D. But I came across chapter 90 in Journey, and probably it was the whole book one, the original body that you received, that prepared me for everything. Like, it launched me into a whole new world completely, that I was quite receptive to, because I've always wondered about the otherness or the aliens, and anything was possible in my mind. Of course there could be. We're here, we exist as the human experience. But chapter 90 talks about the 3D to the 6D. Just yesterday, I don't know how it was, right? But talks about everyone promises to marry their soul with their body. We have been prepared, even in the, but it's about,
Thing up for you guys.
it
She's-
says we're already 5D. It reminded Kate.
Lorraine, you're breaking up.
Judy,
Yeah.
you're, wow. I wonder if I move, there seems to be an interference. You're breaking up when you speak with me as well, and I'm wondering if it's my connection.
Mhm.
Probably, yeah. But we heard you say that everybody's in 5D already. That's how you finished. Did you have a
Okay.
question? Did you have a question for Rick?
No, I just wanted to reiterate, for me, my experience, that we were being prepared with little nuggets before. for this coming, like for what was coming in Secrets of the Unknown. And review chapter 90, any of you in your own time, and it tells us exactly where we are now,
Yeah.
how we've got to where we are now.
It's actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. I feel all of what was offered previous to Journey Secrets prepared us, including Proverbs, which softened any boundaries we still carried between the seen and unseen and made it all feel more seamless because we were hearing from people we kind of knew on the planet. And while there was a mundane reason why it didn't come out sooner, both Secrets and Proverbs Rick did receive in June, July, I believe. But I had decided to take August off because my family was here from California. It was a very mundane reason. However, as I began to dig into it in October, September, October, after all that was over, it feels completely perfect where the timing with which it's coming out, including this final couple of installments. And today, by the way, I just want to say, and I looked at the clock and it's 11:11 on my computer. 11 a.m. here EST is the peak of the solstice. So it feels like a very beautiful time for us to be exploring these enormous and yet microscopic secrets that live within us. So it probably was nudges that I didn't even notice I was getting. Rick, would you like to share your experience with secrets? Because I remember talking to you about what to do with it. And go ahead.
Well,
When
I felt like it was hard to write it because I don't really like sciencey kind of talk, and I felt like it was confusing to me, and I wasn't sure about it. It was unlike all the other parts of Journey. So Christina, for me, helped me to understand it because I read it all the way through, one time, I think, before I sent it to her, and I was just really unknowing about it. But then the way that she presents it with the pictures and the audio and the way each paragraph's numbered, that really helped me to understand it so much better. And now I really like it. So from not really caring that much about it to really liking it because of how it was presented. So thank you, Christina.
Well, thank you. I really feel it kind of expands us in a way, this bigger picture. It just gives us another perspective of where we are, who we are. Judy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no. I just was and just to dovetail on what Lorraine was saying about how if I would have told myself 3 years ago that you would be thinking about the Palladians and the Arcturians and archangels and angels, I would have thought you're crazy. The veil between the seen and the unseen was so real, that you don't, well, that was okay if you thought about it in religion class or something like that, or, or you had a prayer or something. But now, especially, the veil has been lifted, and listening to people that are talking from the other side, who, Billy Graham and I read over the Proverbs again. It just brings it so down to earth. So it makes it so real, because you knew these people, they lived here, and for them to come and bring these messages forward, I think helps us really. And what you said, it helps us to break down the barriers between us. And especially, now, like I never would have thought about the summer solstice before. It didn't mean anything to me, really. But I've been thinking about this for a couple of days. No, maybe a couple of weeks now, because, reading on Facebook too, a lot of the channelings that have been done, everybody has been talking about this particular time. So it's been really great to have this ability to get all this information like this just blown my mind. All these secrets is just so different, so amazing what we were learning here. It's just
Which is a good thing to blow our minds. So I think the phrase I used in my newsletter was heart expanding and mind bending. But it certainly puts the mind into a more, what's the word for it? when something melts and it's kind of flexible and soft. There's a word for it, which I can't think of now. Yeah, it makes the mind definitely more fluid, and therefore we can understand it all. So great, perfect timing. So Irene, welcome. We can't see you, but I'm assuming you can hear us because.
Well, I could put my picture up, but my background here is this room is such a mess.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here, Irene. Glad you're here. So would you have any other questions for Rick, or maybe we could just step through the chapters like we did last week? Judy, Jude rather. Do you have anything you would like to ask Rick or anything? Irene?
Oh, me? Well,
That's
it
okay.
was, yeah, I thought of something yesterday, but I can't remember what it is.
That's okay. It'll come back. It'll come back. All right. So let's look at the chapters. The first one is about chapter 28. That one for me certainly was kind of really getting the fact that there are unintended consequences and unanticipated consequences in creation. I mean, if we had any remaining ideas that God is like all-knowing and there's no mistakes or whatever, forget it. Forget it. You know, it's just another level of separation blown away, you know.
Mm-hmm. God makes mistakes. That's what I've got written here.
Well, I guess.
Wow,
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to learn.
But I want to acknowledge that it can also be very scary for a lot of people. And that's why we're here doing this work together, to be there for people who begin to see it in different ways and realize that the responsibility lies within. Responsibility, not like in a burdened way, but my ability to respond to what's in front of me, you know? So, yeah.
And with compassion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For the other who is afraid and doesn't understand.
Right. So.
Well, we don't always understand, but I'm going to use this. So I was going to say, take it on faith. That what we're hearing is a truth. And so if other people don't understand it, it's like perfectly understandable.
And compassion is always the answer. Always the answer, recognizing and responding with love. So it looks like that chapter was real easy. Let's go on to the next one then. Chapter 29, what was form intended for?
Just before we go on, in that chapter too, that the elements, you know, the fire, the earth, and the water were also like a step, a level of the creation before we could go into the thinking form. That kind of made me look at that a little differently as well.
Sort of ancient and connected to the earth and
yeah.
And I immediately flashed on Frozen 2, where the four elements are a central part of the story. Unifying all of that is in Frozen 2. That's the whole thing, you know. So very much returning to source as a unified whole. Yeah.
Well, that they are an entity unto themselves in a way that we, of course, we can't live without the air.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that was
right. Living elementals, really.
Living, exactly.
Absolutely living elementals. And in some sense, you know, while the creation story is taking us from the ground up, so to speak, the journey without distance back home is back to that ground, you know? And that's what the story of Frozen 2 was, her journey home to herself, the heroine's journey. And as part of that, she encountered the four elements and had to, you know, have these adventures with them. So
that's right.
And that's what we're on, home to ourselves as all powerful, as God. I'm just going to say it. It's still hard for me to say, you know. Yeah. So keep going. Anybody else on this chapter, the next chapter? Form
Number
is
th-
king.
Number 3, the
Mhm.
control of limited thought has been the downfall of not only the Earth Project, but many other humanoid projects as well.
Mhm.
If the fear ratio is too great, a spell is cast, and this spell is so powerful that it permeates the landscape.
Mhm.
Um, so we did become that shadow. We are the first artificial intelligence example, or that we're aware of. But
Mhm.
there's those other humanoids where projects succeeded, and those that are still trying to succeed or in the process of moving forward.
And what happened here, the way things evolved and our programming is that form is everything, right? And that sentence there about how
Yeah.
resilient it is, how strong it is, what others think of it. Oh boy, is that a big one? You know,
Mhm.
huge one. Everyone cultivates not just an image in general ways, but in their form. I mean, I combed my hair. I made sure I looked nice. You know, I put a scarf on that's Christmassy. We all do it, but it's keeping it in its place that's important. I love looking nice to myself, but it's not the most important thing. So again, I don't want to add any separation into any of this, you know, but it's sort of like as we move home to ourselves, but I don't know how to describe this. It's almost like gathering up all of this into one whole. Everything that we had excluded and said wasn't, you know, not true or not good is not, I'm not saying it's not good to look nice and feel good. No, but gather it up into one. And from that place, pick and choose as you please, but not make anything king. It was interesting that word form is king in your world, you know? Yeah. And not worrying about appearance is not king either. Just so we know, you know, not worrying is not king either, you know. Sometimes we do have concern.
Mhm. It's taking all of it up, like you say, Christina,
Into one
into
whole.
the truth of who we are, really knowing who we are with all of it.
Yeah.
And no separation, as you said, bringing it back to the truth of
I
who
got,
we are.
we have to find some images for all of this. As I said, when I get my quiet time off, I have a feeling there might be images or models or something that I'll find or will land, you know, because one of the ones that keeps popping into my mind is from my middle school biology class where I learned about amoebas
Mhm.
and how they can just unfold, you know, they float a single cell
Single
organism,
cell.
right? And when it wants to eat, it comes across this particle it wants to eat and it just flows around it and then folds it. And then it gets absorbed into itself. And then it's, you know what I'm saying? There's no, it just kind of, it's a
Yeah.
blob. It's a blob. And
Yeah.
there is no separation.
And it's emerging.
Yeah, merging is a good word.
Emerging.
I had a question about number 3. What exactly do they mean by the control of limited thought? Who's controlling limited thought?
Over to you, Rick.
Well, you know, people are always trying to control through thought, and the thought that they're controlling with is, you know, very limited. You know, right now we have 6 aspects of God here talking in unity and relationship. God is not out in the sky somewhere separate from us, and we're not the damned who became severed from God. It's all integrated, and we love all parts of ourselves and don't judge them as being bad or unworthy, because we know that we are part of God, as is absolutely everything, because God is everywhere, even in the space between us, in inanimate objects, in all of nature. So it's a new idea of God. And then what I liked about the Proverbs is that a lot of those people would not have been put in a spiritual book because they were deemed sinners or evil people by, you know, like especially religious people. But they're part of us. all of their stuff is all of my stuff and all of your stuff too, because it's all one. So we embrace everything and everybody as being part of the one self. So it's a new way to look at God and look at everything. And
Mhm.
you are over there and I'm over here. That is true, but also the commonality of what's fueling, our bodies and everything. The knowledge of that's God, that's source energy, and that's new. And so, yeah, I think that this would be very startling to people and they would want to reject it because all of those ideas that you were talking about have been programmed in here. People don't like to, break away from that because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's the limited control is the separated thought system. It is that ego that won't give up the control when we don't know who we truly are, when we haven't expanded or to become everything that you just said, Rick. So that's where we've um, we've become our own God. No, we know everything. We know what we know, and we're not going to open up to anything else, right? Or so that to me is the ego thought system, the separated thought system. It's the limiting control. We've what's the word I'm looking for? Sabotaged God. Like we've taken the place of we've become our own little limiting God, right? We've took that tiny mad idea that we could separate and do it on our own. We didn't need God. We could, and look where it got us. But look, it got us here.
Well, it's perfect.
Here we are.
Everything was perfect, right? Because so let's go on to the next chapter. That's a perfect segue because the next chapter is about shadow
Mhm.
and how it was created as a strengthening tool. So all of that fear, God created fear. Remember that from last week?
Yeah.
God
That's
created fear. So it was all purposeful. But of course, we're now being told that it took on a life of its own and kind of got out of hand. So it needs to be reined in a little bit, kind of thing. So that's what this chapter is essentially saying. What it was intended for was to strengthen us, which many have, and many have not been able to use it as a strengthening tool. So
but that's the chapter 2 that I brought up because it seems, the goal, if there was a goal, was to marry the soul and the body.
absolutely,
weren't
it's never
separate
been done
things.
before, right?
Never
Or
been
it's
done.
in a way that reflected some false image, right? And this is the never been done before to reflect God. That's what's so exciting about this. So in verse 3, it asks about what is your relationship with souls who have taken on the human project and are blind to anything. That's the question that we're asking. And then number 4 talks about many of them praying to us for help, money, food, paying the rent, health issues, abuse by a boyfriend, all of it is going on inside of God. And how can God allow this? And the short answer is
Everything is allowed.
There is free will. And this planet is probably a rarity in that, having free will. Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I looked at, but that goes to 30. No, not 31. Goes to 32 because I was reading all of this, and I was thinking about what you said last week about free will being something that was unique, I think, to Earth. And I think from reading all of this, I got the impression that free will is throughout all of creation, not just Earth. But in number 2, it sounds as though, like I found this really interesting, that all of creation, there was like experimentation going on, or because he says he experimented with the ratios of fear.
Right, right.
And what happened here was that the negative to positive balance was too high. In other I don't know, planets or universes, the ratio was maybe more on an even keel, because he says they were successful. They were much more successful.
Yeah.
But with us, because the fear took over, because the ratio was too high. And I thought, why would he do that? Why would he allow?
Well, how else do you test the limits, right? I mean, think about it.
Yeah, makes it really hard on the people that have to go through
Well,
all
think
that.
about how our medical system works, and I have personal experience with this. You know, this whole thing of, and actually they use the thing of cancer in the next chapter, I think, but the whole thing about cancer and chemotherapy is keeping a fine balance during treatment between killing the cancer and killing the patient.
Yeah.
All right. As treatments have improved and expanded, they've been able to raise that threshold in a way that doesn't kill as many patients, but kills the cancer. How else could they have done it except by raising it a little at a time and whatever, you know, and some patients die. And there was a time appointed which they misread some number, and thank God I had seen it, because I might have died, because they're about to give me a big dose of something when I should not have been given that dose, given the blood counts. So it's very messy and very experimental. And I feel like this is what God is saying, that creation is, and we're all participating. That's the thing. We are all participating in it. We always thought that we were here, the receivers or the victims of it. Rick, do you want to add anything to that, love? Because that's like a big, big thing in this whole journey book.
I think ratios can be talked about as perimeters. So maybe in some environments, you know, you have the choice between going from step 1 to step 10. But maybe in this environment, you know, there's step 1 to step 1000.
That's a good way of putting it.
And because there's so much leeway, then that, you know, maybe that's caused a lot of problems that weren't intended.
Yeah, Rick, that helps. That gives me a good perspective of a way of looking at it. But in chapter 32, it does say it is a risk of having free will, but it spans throughout all of creation. So it would be at all levels, and levels are dimensions of degrees of love or levels of love, right? So I think free will is, as Judy has discovered or suggested, and that's what we're jumping to 32 because I think you want to go through them. But it does, if we do read that whole paragraph on 1, when we get to 32, God does tell us it spans throughout all of creation. So the ratio thing, I think you're right. The parameters, that makes perfect sense to me.
I still feel there's something special about Earth, the Earth Project. And I don't know why I feel that way. But you know what just dropped in this second is somewhere, I think it was in Celebrations with Jesus, there was one time where the Arcturians visited. And they were here being shown around because they wanted to know how things were being done here to raise the vibration on this planet so significantly. Oh, that was the plan, so that they could take it back. So that was kind of interesting. So there's something in there. You're right. Free will is everywhere at this stage, but yeah.
And isn't everybody watching this project, like all hands on deck, all eyes, to help us accomplish taking form? Like maybe we're the first ones to combine. We will demonstrate or illustrate, or what was it that we had a few weeks ago? We will be the first ones that represent, we will show we are animated by spirit.
Maybe.
Before we've just been showing we're animated by programming.
Right. Well, that's the plan. That's the intended plan. And there's no guaranteed outcomes is what I think they're also saying. But just we can keep going obviously from here, but I just want to just go back up a little to 31 and say the thing that struck me about 31 is that all parts of God are changing and adjusting. So that means everything is in flux. This is whole systems change, which is why it feels so chaotic, and which is why this book, I think, is called A Journey into the Unknown, because we lose all reference points, right? When everything is in flux. So you can't rely on God being in charge. That's one huge reference point, anchor point gone, right? Our bodies are changing. You can't guarantee, everything is in flux. The sun is changing, the galaxy is changing, the planet is blowing up, So it really is every part of God is changing. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Chapter.
that was kind of enlightening for me, because you titled it, Christine, "Why Are All Parts of God Now Changing and Adjusting?" And your point being, even God is changing and adjusting.
Mhm.
This is, I mean, it is absolute that there's a source greater than us, but it's like the ripple effect, I guess. The butterflies flapping wing, like changes the, I forget that story to really tell it with detail, but anyway, everything changes right up to the source itself with
And
our little change.
the adjustment in source is really in that last paragraph 6 says that because they've discovered there is a limit to creation, and there's a danger to it as it is unanticipated. And so there is something that has to be reined in, are the last words of that chapter. So that's kind of where we are. And so let's go back to 32.
Can I just ask about that limit? Like I had a question mark by that. A limit meaning that if there's too much fear, there is a limit, or that
assuming they set up some parameters, right? That ratio they were talking about.
Right.
And now they see that, oh, wait a minute, that's not quite going the way we thought it would. So
right.
That's how Rick, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to increase love,
Right.
but the increase of the
Shadow.
resistance to love, has been so great, and it's it's everywhere. The resistance to love is everywhere, and so and there doesn't seem to be a limit to that. It just seems to be growing and growing and growing. So but again, the goal, we always have to remember, what's the goal? The goal is to increase love. It's for me to be more of a representation of my soul rather than my brain. And so the marriage between soul and form, that's always the goal. And yet here, there's plenty of resistance to that. Even reading this book, even just reading the book would be probably very triggering for a lot of people who have just had it pounded in their head, other ideas about God and creation and about you and me and everything. All of those ideas, though, were created by other brains, other people, mainly men, who taught us and drilled it into our head and made us afraid to question it, because something bad might happen to us if we did. And there have been plenty of times in history when people were branded as heretics for not believing and for questioning what were essentially ideas that came from men. They weren't ideas from God. So, yeah, that's resistance.
This whole idea of the ratios and fear taking over, I think goes back to what you were saying about the uniqueness of what we're going through here, in that we're probably one of the planets where the fear ratio is higher, and maybe they haven't had too many successes in terms of having love grow. And what's happening here is that despite the fear ratio being out of whack, we are still showing that love can grow. It can manage through all of this. We're right now, we're supposedly getting some kind of extra help, but I think we haven't. maybe what we have achieved so far has allowed us to receive this help, because we could have blown ourselves all to smithereens, then there wouldn't have been any need for the extra help. So I think that that was one of the things that it needs to be celebrated, that we have prevailed despite having all of the hardships that we've had to go through.
Right, right. And actually on chapter 32 that we're on, if you look at verse 2, well, I'll just read you the first line. It says, the vast majority of our creations are service to others.
Yeah.
They have stayed in alignment with their true nature. And now the adjustments are in order to deal with a growing shadow. They must raise the vibration of the vibrating. So I think you're right, Judy. It's we're in okay shape. She says cautiously optimistic. And the goal is to raise the vibration even higher, because that has to happen before the next harvest. So
Yeah.
so let's go on to 33. Sorry, was somebody, Lorraine, did you want to say?
No, I was just going to say service to self, like the original intent of the fear that was created was a foil to
Right,
overcome it and increase the love, as you said. And it didn't happen in the way God intended. And for what Judy just said and what you said as well, Rick, all those things. I had a thought in Scott, but this kind of emphasizes what happened. Service to self became pretty predominant rather than service to, how do they put it? Service to self and service to others, right? I
Right.
think that was so the service to self represents the success of the fear and the limitations, which were intended to just be a foil, or that would get us to love, help us to get to love.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing that it was actually hard for me to read this chapter, to record it, because the final paragraph talks about, not only does it pain us to see so much widespread fear, but it actually pains us.
What?
That was a significant sentence to me, because it spoke what I have felt myself for much of my life, with family and situations that I've gone through in work and even within spiritual community. It has pained me. There's been no aggression or anger or wanting to fix or judge, but pain, yeah, grief. And that has been also judged as, oh, you're somehow not quite there yet, because you're really feeling this grief. So to read this sentence was really pretty powerful for me. Remember, everything lives inside of God, even the shadow. So we weep and then we get up and carry on, with compassion and love and awareness. And anyway, that's just what touched me deeply. So chapter 33. Sorry, Irene, did you want to?
Oh, I just wanted to say how I explain this to myself is that what I hold in consciousness, I get more of. So what do I want? If I'm scaring myself to death here, or whatever I'm scaring myself about, because I have some kind of an ailment that I have not been able to release for some reason, and I don't know why. But anyhow, so what do I want to hold on to? What do I want more of? And I just keep saying all the spiritual thoughts that I can possibly remember or not remember to counter my fear thoughts.
Mhm.
Because I believe that what I hold in consciousness, I create. And so it's just am I willing to create or recreate something that I really,
Mhm.
more pleasurable than
Well, it's like
And the
something
fear
you said
that
to
I
us.
Mhm. Lorraine, go ahead.
It's like something you said to us, I think a week or two ago, Irene. What do you want to watch? Friday the 13th or It's a Wonderful Life?
Mhm.
Mm. And and I'd like to add to that, that for me, when the fear comes up, to do what you're describing, Irene, that you said about choosing thoughts to counter the fear, what works best for me is to, first of all, notice the fear and then welcome it and love it. I like feel like I'm throwing a warm blanket around the fear. And sometimes literally I do need to go sit down and put a warm blanket around myself to be with that fear, but to love it, because that is saying I want more love. I've taken a step that says I want more love and I'm going to give it. When I want something, I give it, right? I mean, that's anyway. So yeah, that's a weird way of countering something by enfolding it like the amoeba. It's like,
Yes.
it hasn't got a leg to stand on because it's already become part of me.
Right. It would get dissolved into
Yeah.
the love. It would
It's
get
legless. At that point, it's legless.
assumed or consumed by the love, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay, so where are we? 33? Are we ready for 33? Oh, community and companionship, yeah. Which is what God was lonely. And that's a very interesting chapter too. Anyone?
Mhm. Judy, you're on mute.
Question I had about
Judy, you're on mute.
No,
Go ahead.
I took it off. The question I had about 33 was that in number 2, he says, I went forth and multiplied and have been doing so since the beginning, since my birth. Now here, I had to stop and think, because isn't God eternal? And I thought, why is he saying since my birth? And then I was talking with Lorraine yesterday, and I came up with the idea that maybe it's because when the I am energy first had the thought, when it became aware of itself and had thought about creating, and then when it became not the I am energy, but I am, and it began to create, and maybe he means that, because I couldn't figure out how could God have a birth.
Well, we decided too that maybe coming from the potential is what you were saying, coming out of
Yeah.
the potential to the creator,
Mm.
But yeah, then we have to go to what came first, the chicken or the egg, because if he came out of the potential, he was the creator before that somehow, like, right? So it's okay.
Rick, do you want to add anything to this?
So again, God is like all of us. God is eternal, of course, and we have part of us that is eternal, our souls, but also we are experiencing time and all the changes that it brings. So I think it's both.
Again, no separation.
Right, because all of us are parts of God. And so hopefully from reading this, people will discover that God really is not that different from you or I. Irene was talking about choosing love over fear, but when I read this book, I'm feeling like God or the bigger picture entities are doing that too. Just like we do it, maybe in a smaller way in our own lives. We try to do it, maybe sometimes successfully and sometimes not. But it doesn't matter. We love those parts of ourselves too, because we're past judging ourselves and condemning ourselves for being imperfect, because that's a concept, a brain concept, imperfect or perfect. So to me, when I read the book, thanks to Christine's presentation of it and my greater understanding of it, is that God is very much like us because we are part of God. So what we're experiencing, maybe other parts of God experience in a bigger way, maybe in a more dramatic way, maybe not. But the fact that we all have this eternal part of ourselves is true. And we also have our time bound parts of ourselves, our bodies and our our lives here. And so it's all true.
Yeah.
And when I look at at all of journey, I mean, that's the big takeaway message. It's all true. It's not one or the other, it's everything.
It's that phrase that my family has teased me about forever, both and.
Oh,
Seriously, that's what oneness is. I mean, there's no outside, it's everything. Everything,
mhm.
everything.
Well, as you were speaking, Rick, it made me realize how I still separate out God as being other or over there, yet
Mhm.
also I experience God within, or that's who I am, right? There's no separation, but it's so easy
Yeah.
for the mind, when we're trying to figure out how he was birthed. Well, we just have to think of ourselves. That's what you brought
Right.
me back to, that, right? There's,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever we're experiencing, God is experiencing. He's not out there, he's in here,
It's such a
or
clue.
she.
Well, we can say they. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember to do. It's coming pretty naturally now, but the it's a real clue for me when I have a question or feeling like something isn't quite right or something is a bit wrong, that I'm in my mind, because the mind is always breaking things into pieces. That's its function. It's a very important function. It simply needs to be kept in its place. The heart knows and holds. So that's immediately a clue to kind of take a breath and drop into the heart and just be with that, because in the heart, it's all there. There are no separated out sharp little bits. There's no chicken and egg, So, yeah. And the last thing I just wanted to add this quickly for this paragraph and the chapter and all of this stuff is what's been coming up for me a lot is there's a whole chapter in Mirari, The Way of the Marys, that describes this Genesis in its own language, in Mary's language, which is a more feminine language. And it's more of a, if you breathe yourself down and then go into reading it and just let it go in, it's sort of like, I'm looking forward to going back, because when I first read it a couple of years ago, I didn't get it at all. I wasn't clearly open enough to get it. And then when the book came out a year ago or so, it made a little more sense. But it's a very beautiful and very clear description, just in a different way. There are so billion ways to speak the truth, express the truth. So that's something I'm looking forward to doing also. And then to see how it all ties together, for me, weaving it all together. So if we're good to keep going for a while, because I do want to touch on shock to the system as well. We have, I guess, one more chapter 34. Anybody, go ahead. The question I took out there is, what is the theme of the next creation cycle? I love the theme. Anybody remember it?
Oh, the harmony and the relationship.
Harmony in the relationship. Yeah. That's just so beautiful and so hard to really imagine, to be honest, in today's world.
But it is the peace. I mean, we have to find the peace within. When we find out who we are, and we all come to know who we truly are, I think the world will solve its problems. We will come to what is always been my dream of peace, of being able to get along, and just having tranquility and joy, accepting everything, everyone. There's diversity and differences are so embraced as being the ordinary, all of it. So that is how I envision. And we've been asked by Rami to use the art of thought to envision, well, what's 5D going to be like? What's it's going to be like? And just in the last few days, and Rami didn't bring up art of thought on this Sunday's message, but it's kind of come to me. The art of thought is replacing the separated thought system with the thought system of God. And it's me coming to know more and more who I truly am and how I embrace that. The old program still gets in there, right? But when I've embraced that totally and completely at peace with myself and know who I truly am, everything, the world, all the environmental, they're going to take that, it'll get sorted out. The unconditional love of Mother Earth, when we receive it completely and wholly and understand it, as we are that divine feminine principle as well. So the art of thought for me is truly embracing and knowing who I am, and everything else will resolve itself. I'm not here to fix it, to change it. I'm only here to change me. And when I change me, and everyone else changes themselves, or I'm in union with everybody. So the more I change myself, the more everybody else is going to get changed, like come to this realization as well. And it will be in that peaceful place. We'll be in harmony within ourselves first, right?
You know how I know I haven't finished my work yet?
Oh, Christina.
Because we haven't got that harmony and peace and sharing and joy and rainbows and unicorns we're talking about. That's how I know I'm not done my work.
Mm-hmm. We're still all working on it, right?
Yeah, so you're right. The art of thought is everything. I'm so glad Rami brought that up. When I first saw it, oh my God, thank God, because it really is. It's that full experience as a human, full experience as divine, fully feeling into the relationship, the union and relationship and the gift that it is, and then responding. That's our part. So the response could be sitting in stillness. The response could be going out and doing something. The response could be speaking. The response could be sending some money to somebody. The response could be anything. There's a million ways to respond, and every one is unique to the person holding that particular thread, and we're weaving that thread together. So, that's lovely.
To that, I would say that you are a vision. You are who you are to me is how I see you. So, I say when I change, you change. Absolutely. Because when I change, my view of you changes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all you are to me is my concept.
Right.
So if I want to see lovely yous out there, then I better see a bunch of lovely me's.
Well, I see 5 lovely yous on this screen, and feel the lovely yous who will listen to this afterwards from the recording. And yes, definitely.
We could say, as I look at other people and say, I don't like that person, say, well, what is it that part of me that I don't like about me? And when I change that, then you automatically are going to change.
Right. More love. It's always more love, isn't it? How boring is that? It's always more love.
Right. Yeah. Some people, well, that's so boring. Well,
there's some other.
You don't know. You haven't tried it.
I know. We look for complexity when there really isn't, is there? So
I gotta go. Sorry,
Judy.
Okay. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Anybody
Judy.
can stay. Bye, Judy. Have a good holiday. And can anybody stay for a few more minutes?
Yes, I can.
You can, Lorraine?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, so let's just carry on for a little bit. Hopefully we'll wrap up pretty soon. I was going to say something and I've forgotten.
Well, that chapter 34 as well, it says, this kind of segues into what we've just been talking about. We have much to do before the next harvest and freeze. Mm-hmm. We still have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And every second, every choice we're making, all of that art of thought, every moment. And that image of breaking cocoons was interesting.
Yes.
I'm breaking through cocoons, not only here, but in many different environments, in many different worlds, because that's all parts of God changing, I guess. But that paragraph 3 was really significant for me because for the first time, we have those who have moved from Christ awareness or divine awareness, which was A Course in Miracles, reason for being, right? To Christ consciousness, which is the reason A Course of Love came, to fully embodied Christ manifestation, which is why A Journey into the Unknown completes that trilogy. In other words, I'm breaking through cocoons. So this is the place where, and it was earlier, there was another chapter that kind of referenced this too, where I want to bring in the shock to the system, which also was offered this week, this last Saturday, because, you know, we all have a role to play. And those of us who've been fortunate enough to encounter Rick and A Journey into the Unknown and have had the experience of this material are being asked to play a particular role. And a shock to the system is what really takes us into that role as it is informed. You know, what is it you do as a Christ, as Christ consciousness, as Christ transformation in the body, you know, because that's what it's about. The step is bringing it into the body, as you've said before, Lorraine, and several of you have said that. And then what's the completion of that cycle? How does the new earth, how does it arise, the harmony arise through you and out of you? So I just want to go to the introduction of A Shock to the System and read the 10 powers of Christ. So we kind of conclude on that point, because that's pretty fantastic when you look at shock. We got round 1 back in July, but now we've got 2 more rounds to practice with scenarios. So here they are. Let me just read them. The 10 powers of Christ. As God, as an individualized aspect of God, you have certain powers and abilities. These are: 1, the power to alter the course of another aspect of yourself. 2, the power to stop suffering. 3, the power to alleviate need. 4, the power to grant wishes and desires. 5, the power to enhance. 6, the power to change situations and outcomes. 7, the power to know and trust. 8, the power to explore. 9, the power to invest. And 10, the power to manifest. So that leaves us in a pretty powerful place with a pretty powerful calling to act, to live as love on the planet, to live as Christ on the planet. And I have to stay with that, you know, for a long time, I think, and sink into it with the scenarios, because that's like calling to me to drop all resistance, dissolve all resistance and attachment to living small and live huge, huge.
Mhm. I think that's the microcosm aspect of our being. And this takes me back to chapter 19, where it says, the 5D grade are all of you. I don't know if it was Jesus or Cadre of Souls on that did chapter 90. It was just part of the body of the book 1.
Yes,
The
yes.
5D grade are all of you, saints among men. When you leave here, you will most likely be at the 6D level and will not return to any 3D world unless you volunteer for a special assignment. So that is there, and that the macrocosm, which are secrets of the unknown, are talking about, that chapter 34 ends with verse 5. I am the original nameless one, which takes us back kind of to chapter 33, where the creator who's speaking, as I have said before, I have never spoken directly like this before, but I do communicate. I am the elder statesman for I am. Well, that stopped me for a minute because I had to think, but you are I am. You are the elder statesman for I am. And then when it concludes on chapter 34, I am the original nameless one. So that brings me back to the macrocosm of the Holy One, the Creator, in however it refers to itself, the original nameless one, to the I am the original nameless one, to the elder statesman for I am, to I am. And it connects us back to that, the macrocosm of shifting, of changing, of being part of it all, from the minuscule, the little part that we're called to do through the power, all of it. And he does say that.
Let's take a breath and drop out of that mind.
Okay.
And feel it. Feel those powers of Christ. Feel it right here. That's what we're being asked, how we're being asked to walk around the world. And I know I only do it in little bits and pieces during my days, but I pray for reminders. I pray for the team to be with me and kick my butt if needed. You know, it doesn't, anytime, I want to be back there. I want to be back here, which includes the mind. It's wholeheartedness. I'm not leaving my mind out of this. I couldn't, my mind is too strong. My mind has been invited in. It would have fought me tooth and nail if I tried to ignore my mind. Yeah.
But so, it's to be the love, to be the love, to be the walking, talking
around. It's felt, it's energy. We're pure energy. That's what, you know, this is. And so, and out of this body, out of this energy, this world of harmony and relationship and union and sharing, the gift economy that I have longed for, you know, for a long, long time. Each one sharing, giving, being exactly who they are without any comparisons and judgments and hierarchy to do with any dimension in the world, you know. It's pure energy. And playing with it, that's the other thing, not to get too serious about it, but to feel into it and experiment with it, you know.
It's to be the love that goes back to the source of what animates us, the love that animates us. And it's to be the source. So that's what I was trying to link up, and you could articulate it quite well. Thank you.
Being it. So let's go and practice all of this and the powers of Christ. What are we going to manifest? Chocolate chip cookie? Maybe.
It's Christmas. All kinds of wonderful things. The wonder of Christmas, the birthing of the source.
Seriously, you know, I feel like I've only made one batch of cookies, and I asked to have this experience and the help. And I have to say, it's probably the most effortless, fluid 3 hours I spent making these cookies, or maybe it was even 2 hours, but it felt effortless. Because when I finished and wiped up the last tray, I thought, wow, did I really just do that? You know, usually I'm tired, my back hurts, my feet hurt, I'm resentful, you know. It was the minuscule moments of joy all the way through. Spark.
The blessing of Christmas. You were making Christmas cookies. Blessing of Christmas.
I think we can be blessed cleaning the toilet too, in the same way.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
yeah.
Anyway, Irene's taking a snooze. She's so bored with us. Let's wrap up. It's 12:10. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Lorraine. Yeah. Thank you, Irene. Thank you.
Rick, lovely having you with us too. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Yes. have a
Greetings of the season
celebration,
and
celebration.
love. Much love. I send my
Very
love.
Love you all. See you next week,
Okay.
maybe, whoever can make it
Ye-
next week.
Yes,
the last
I'll
one.
be here.
Conversation.
I should be
Bye,
here.
loves.
Okay. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.